Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC preview of the first week of the LEC Spring Split Playoffs. Yes, it's been a while, and that's because the LEC took an unexpectedly long break of 3 weeks instead of 2. But finally, the time is here. We're at the best of 5 stage. So yeah, I'm just gonna go into the series and discuss the teams and their strengths and how I think the series will go. Instead of doing first a recap of how the teams have been performing because of the long break, just kind of do a reassessment. So we obviously kick off today with Rogue versus Misfits. Rogue finished in first place, chose Misfits as their opponent over, I think the other choice they had was G2. Makes a lot of sense if you just look at the lineups overall. I think G2 has a lot of more of that star power that can pop up, such as Cap, such as Jankos, whereas Misfits has been all about Viteo. So let's start just talking about Rogue. Rogue, king of the regular season, once again, very impressive. That's something that they have been consistently good at being the best of one. Kings cracking that nut, so to speak, and playing that out perfectly. Now, heading into best of fives, many people are gonna wonder, okay, is Rogue gonna choke again? Even though they made it to the finals all the way last year, that's obviously where they notoriously choked with a 2-0 lead, one game away from MSI, one game away from the championship. They faltered and Mad Lions reverse swept them 3-2. And then in the summer split last year, obviously, they struggled a lot with Misfits, barely clutched out the victory 3-2 there. And then fell off a cliff basically and lost twice in an 0-3 fashion. So that was a very difficult time for them. But I do think that this Rogue is a bit more resilient because I think the choking was mostly mentality wise, or you can blame it on the mentality of the team. You could see if you read a bit in the interviews, and I did a long form interview with Freddy as well, which was on Upcomer, talking about kind of touching on this a little bit, but that a player like Inspired, for example, was one of the players when it was going badly, it would negatively impact his mood. And obviously it's not just Inspired's fault, but other people need to deal with losses and the way other teammates behave as well. So it's all like a collaborative effort, right? That's why it's a team game. But I do think that this team now is a bit more healthy in their mindset. Now we have to see obviously how healthy that is, because what if they start losing against Misfits? What if they're 0-2 down? Are they going to collapse again, or are they actually going to be resilient? I have my doubts about that, but I don't think they're going to be brought in a position like this, because I do think that this Rogue lineup is just quite a bit better than the Misfits lineup. If I look at Rogue as a whole, Malrang is the most important player there because he gives up his entire jungle to boost his laners, right? His bot lane, his mid lane, and top. He sacrifices his own jungling to do that. And if that strategy doesn't work, if he gets caught out, or if his laners are put behind early and he can't make that work, that's when Rogue collapse, right? So it kind of stands or falls with Malrang, in my opinion. But I don't see Misfits as a team that's going to consistently punish it, because Misfits is all about Veteo. Veteo had to massively overperform in the regular spring split in order for Misfits to be here. He is undoubtedly the MVP, in my opinion. I think you cannot make an argument against anything. Like, he's the best mid laner in the spring split with the performance he put on. Without him, Misfits would maybe contest for 6th, maybe, they might not even be in playoffs without Viteo. So yeah, but that's a whole discussion that's different. But if I look at these teams matching up, I think that Larsen is going to hold his own perfectly fine against Veteo, who plays a lot of different champions, and Larsen hasn't played a lot of different champions, but the champions that Larsen plays, he does so perfectly. He should have been second in the All-Pro team votes as well. Don't know why that didn't happen. It's fucking ridiculous, but that's also another discussion for another time. If I look at Misfits, compare like how they take down their opponents, it is Viteo and sometimes Neon, and sometimes Zlatan is in there to help. It's 95% of the time it's Viteo, and then in some games you have Viteo and a Zlatan and a Neon. And I think we had 1 or 2 games where it was just Neon popping up, where Viteo had like an average game, not a bad game, but still an average game, because this guy was just that insane in the split. So looking at the individual matchups, I do think Rogue majorly outperforms Misfits here. The one question mark that people have in terms of adaptability with Rogue is also not something I'm too worried about, if I'm very honest. I do think that Odo Amne is pretty flexible. I think Malrang's pretty flexible. I wonder if Larson, if the opportunity presents himself, like is gonna play a niche pick in order to counter out something like Viteo, or if Rogue just doesn't think that it's necessary. In the bot lane, I think Comba is fine playing anything really. And Trimby is somebody who has proven time and time again to be very flexible. So overall, I do think that this is gonna go Rogue's way, and I can definitely see Misfits taking a game, maybe even two. I would say it's gonna stick to one, maybe with some curveball composition, or maybe it's hard to go 3-0, just statistically speaking. We've seen Misfits also beat Rogue in a best of one, obviously in the split. So yeah, I would say that Rogue is pretty decently favored. I would say it's going to be a 3-1 for them. Then tomorrow we have Fnatic versus G2 Esports, the number 2 team in the regular standings versus the number 4 team in the regular standings. Now, I do think that's not entirely fair. I do think that Fnatic is quite a bit better than G2. I mean, fair in terms of standings. I don't think it's entirely representative. I think Fnatic at this point is the best team in the LEC, because if you look at how they were performing towards the end of the split, you had Humanoid and Razork were woken up, Upset and Hylissang, who were awake earlier in the split than the rest of the team, but they're still performing insanely well. And you have Wounded in the top lane that's very stable. So I think as a unit, Fnatic is much better. G2 does have 3 caliber players who can pop off and carry games in Broken Blade, Jankos, and Caps. I don't see Flacket and Targamas do something like that. But it is still that question mark, right? It is still with those teams such as G2 and those players. Like if Caps pops off and has a pop-off series and he ascends to that level that he was in 2018, 2019, there's nothing Fnatic can do about that, because this guy is just in the zone. He's just playing out there, right? It's hard. It's like what we saw with Viteo in the regular spring split. It's like, okay, teams just can't do something against somebody who's that insane in that moment. But what I do think is massively in Fnatic's favor is that consistency that they've had in the past weeks. Because they did take some time to warm up. Wunder, Razork, Humanoid, Upset as well. Notoriously needed some warm-up time. Hylissang, I think, was great from the get-go. Then we had Upset coming in there. Then it was Wunder maybe stabilizing. And from like week 5 onwards, we saw Humanoid and Razork waking up there as well. But they have found that consistency. What also speaks a lot in Fnatic's favor, to me, is their macro game. I think they have an excellent idea of where to be at the map, at what time compared to the other teams, especially compared to G2, because I think this team has a real problem with closing out games at the moment. You can see that as soon as they are entering phases where, okay, you could argue, okay, maybe push for an inhibitor, push for a Nexus turret even, or something like this, they start to become more hesitant. They start to wander on the map a bit more aimlessly, and I think that the leadership that they lacked last year, which is a commonly cited problem for them, when they lost Perks, they didn't have somebody to make those calls anymore. That's a problem they had last year, and they couldn't fix with the new lineup. They couldn't fill that gap. I still think that is a problem that's gonna plague G2 a bit in these playoffs. So overall, now our prediction is probably gonna surprise you a little bit, because I think that Fnatic is gonna win over G2. That shouldn't surprise you that much, given my analysis. But I think it's gonna be a 3-2, and the reason for that is, for some reason, this series is always a banger. It just has to happen. Historically, there's no exception to like a best of 5 like this. It's always gonna be blood. It's always going to be bloody. It's always going to be messy. For some reason, something snaps in these teams when they're playing against each other, and it's just chaos, and it's beautiful, and it's entertaining, and it's fantastic. But which very well also might result in a 3-0, but it's going to be the most entertaining 3-0 in years in Europe. And then we also have, but we also have the opportunity, the chance that it's going to be a 3-2, and I think it's going to be a 3-2, because I do see a scenario where Broken Blade, for example, and Jankos and Caps are gonna be ahead more than what Fnatic's bot side can cover, right? So I think it's going to be a crazy series. I think Fnatic's going to win it. I'm very much looking forward to it, though. Then finally, we have Vitality versus Excel, or Excel versus Vitality. Excel 5th, Vitality 6th. Now, this is one that I'm looking forward to a lot for narrative purposes, because obviously Vitality, the super team, was made to be a champion, right? This is a lineup, they invested multi-million dollars in it to be a champion lineup. And they finished 6th in the regular split, which is a disappointment, which is why I made a tweet that pissed off so many Vitality fans saying, congratulations on doing the bare minimum with a multi-million dollar super team, because they finished in 6th, which is unacceptable to begin with. But in the playoffs, are they doomed to finish 6th as well? I don't think so. I think they have a realistic shot at becoming top 5. Which is basically beat Excel. And I think they're actually going to do that. I'll outline my reasoning for this. Let's look at Excel first. We have Finn, who is not a good top laner in my opinion. I don't think he was a top 5 top laner in the past split. And I think he is a big weak spot, especially when you play against someone like Afari, who is a master in laning. I think that is something that Vitality can play for. In the jungle, we have Marcoon versus Selfmade. I think Marcoon overall has been better in this spring split than Selfmade. But Selfmade, I think at this point has a higher ceiling, just because he's been around longer. He has seen more. He's done more. He's more experienced. He knows a bit more how far he can go. But the problem with Selfmade is sometimes he goes too far. Marcoon is much better at realizing what he absolutely must not do. But I also think that Marcoon, it's only his second split, and it's fine, you know, like this guy, it's still his rookie year, quote unquote. So give him all that leniency. But I think that Marcoon is going to be maybe a bit more safe for Excel. Then we look at the mid lane, we have Perks versus Nuke Duck. Nuke Duck, very versatile player, very flexible. I think that's a big asset for Excel going into the series, that he can he will just play. Well, I like obviously when he plays Veigar, because that's my main, it's my guy. But we also see him experiment with others. Sona mid, for example, was a terrible thing, but he's somebody who will go and try that, right? And he will try to play it. And I think those curveballs really play to your advantage in a best of 5. Perks has all the other quantities, because we've seen him carry the split. People forget, because maybe in recent weeks, you know, in the last weeks of the regular split, he wasn't that good. But in the early weeks of the spring split, like week 2, week 3, week 4, he was the guy stepping up for Vitality. And he was the one that, if they won games, and even in some of their losses, he was the one trying to carry and playing very well, because he's trying to lift up his team. Now, he's going to do that as well in playoffs, you guaranteed. We've seen it before. He's done it time and time again. It's a proven quality. Plus, he has this factor where he lifts up his team. The intangibles of Perks are something that are kind of mythic at this point, where he is that leader. He will inspire you to perform better, and he will inspire you to play better. So I think that is going to be a big asset to Vitality, and the mental strength of Vitality, just by Perks and the captain role that he has alone, I think is going to lift them up a lot. I do also have to look at the bot lane, obviously. I do think that Patrick and Mickey are much better based on the regular split than what Karji and Labrov have done. I think Karji and Labrov were one of the worst bot lanes in the LEC, which is terrible because they were brought here on a super team, but they just didn't manage to make it work, which is also a surprise, because those two used to play together. They specifically wanted to play together on this team, and they just were losing their lane all the time. It was not good. But with a meta change, I think, which is bound to happen. I wrote an article on Infin Global. You can find it on my socials. You can find my social here. I think that Karzi is going to be allowed to play a bit more different champions. For example, Kai'Sa is a champion that we're seeing coming back. It's a champion he likes to play because it can go in and can go for the outplays. And I think that is something that plays into his strengths. I still think Patrick and Mickey are a better bot lane overall, but I don't think the bot lane of Vitality is going to be as big of a liability as it was during the regular split. So overall, all things considered, I think Vitality will win this 3-1 or 3-2, something like this. and go to the next stage. But it's gonna be an interesting one, because there's a very real world where Excel win this and Vitality finish in 6th place. But I do think, yeah, as I said, with the meta shifting a bit, and also the intangibles, the experience on Vitality, I do think they are gonna close that series out. So those are my predictions for the final, well, not the final, but for the first week of the final stages of the LEC. For the first week of the LEC, we'll just say for now. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be in the LEC studio this weekend and the next weekend and the weekend after. So I'll be there for every single game. I'll make sure to post some pictures, and I'm also going to try to do in-person interviews, which you will then find here on this channel if they are in video form. So stay tuned for more content, and thank you again for watching.